Skaparen Roman Polanski är aktuell med sin nya film Frantic. Nu porträtteras han av Nils Sundgren i det första specialprogrammet som kommer att dyka upp då och då parallellt med den vanliga Filmkrönikan. Den här intervjun är gjord i Stockholm och i programmet kommer också avsnitt och scener ur tidigare Polanski-filmer att visas.
What have you done to it? What have you done to its eyes?
Was that you? What? Eh? I thought I heard. It sounded like a pig. Must be the heat.
Det här är Roman Polanski i tv-studion i Stockholm här veckan. Polanskis surrealistiska mardrömmar har gjort honom till en av vår tids mest uppmärksammade filmregissörer. Och lika berömd har Polanski blivit för sitt privatliv som kantas av katastrofer och katastroftillbud.
Oh yes.
Bangalore.
Yeah. Did you fly on that plane, on the same plane that?
No, that almost killed all the film critics in Europe.
Yeah, because I was on that plane.
You were?
Yeah.
It was an Airbus, which almost
It was
fell
an Airbus,
down.
yeah. One engine blew up.
Yeah. And the first time I saw you was 25 years ago now. You only spoke French at the time.
I remember you were all in plaster and
Yes.
with crouches, etc.
The first film that reached a Western audience was really Two Men in a Wardrobe. What kind of a young man were you when this film was made?
I don't know, it's just terrible for me to look at this. It looks like sins of youth, you know?
What kind of a young man were you when you were a film student?
More or less like you see it here.
Aggressive, hooligan?
No, no, but I was Quite arrogant and cocky. Aggressive? No. This was rather a reflection of hooliganism in Poland in general, which was flourishing in those times, really. But I always had a very high opinion of myself in the film school, you see, which irritated a lot of my colleagues, obviously.
So you thought of yourself as superior to the others?
I thought of myself as more talented than the others, I would put it this way, and probably I was, you know, because when you look at this, maybe doesn't look, it looks a little bit awkward, but somehow promising, you know. And the fact that we're seeing it here is this: I've never sinned with humility, you know. Unfortunately, that cost me a lot of trouble, a lot of problems.
You got interested in the cinema very early, didn't you? At an early age.
Yes, there was something that I felt. I fell in love with in my childhood. It was cinema. Really.
You had a very difficult childhood. I read about it during the war. You were living in the ghetto.
Well, when you look at it from, when you look at it objectively, of course, it was very difficult. A kid doesn't know better, so it was what it was to me. And cinema was some kind of escape in those times. During the war, there was a lot of movies to be seen, German movies, of course, and very cheap.
Even in the ghetto? Or Warsaw?
No, in the ghetto, no. When I was in the ghetto, we saw through the wires the weekly news being screened in the open on the marketplace, where Germans would show the Wochenschau, you see. And there was a certain area, certain angle where through the barbed wire you could see the screen. And we were watching those things. The kids were watching, you know. Of course, must have been an interesting sight from the other angle when you could see those little monkeys behind the wires, you know, trying to get an idea of what movies were like. But later, when I escaped from the ghetto and I lived in Krakow with some family, I would go regular to the cinema. The cinema was dirt cheap, and it was very unpatriotic to go to the cinema, you see. And there was a slogan saying, "Wszystkie świnie siedzą w kinie," which means only pigs sit in the cinema.
Den unge Polanski var alltså den polska filmens gossen Ruda. Han var vanvördig och uppkäftig. Men han var inte alls intresserad av socialrealism, utan gick sina egna vägar. I sin första långfilm som heter Kniven i vattnet så visar Polanski konflikten mellan de makthavande nyrika i den polska borgerligheten och den trotsiga, fattiga, västorienterade ungdomen. Uppgörelsen utspelas ombord på den här segelbåten. Ombord finns en ung flicka och om henne kivas en medelålders älskare och en ung student.
No, co jest, co?
Pan zdejmie śliniak. Skacz! Skacz!
Nie,
Niech pan wyłowi wiosło.
nie umiem
Niech
pływać.
się pan nie wygłupia.
Nie umiem pływać, mam się utopić?
Niech pan skacze.
Zostaw. Ale woda! Daj krokodyla!
Kaleczy pan pokład.
Ja to robię z czuciem.
Gdyby pan wpadł do wody, to by pan jednak popłynął.
Niech pan spróbuje.
Andrzej, krokodyl
Ja żartowałem.
Andrzej! Zabierz płetwy, dobrze?
Na dole jest apteczka. Niech pan opatrzy rękę. Mam panu pomóc?
Filmen Kniven i vattnet ogillades kraftigt av de polska myndigheterna och Polanski sökte sig nu till Västeuropa. Först till Paris där han bodde ett tag med sin första hustru som heter Barbara Lass. Men det var först i London som Polanski fick göra film igen.
I wrote a script with Jean Brash called Repulsion for an English company that needed somehow to upgrade the image. They were mainly involved in sort of slightly skin horror, slightly porno, you know, and they made a great success with a little cinema called Compton Cinema, where they were showing skin flick, what in those times was considered pornography. Today would be, you know, shown on television, you know, at 12 o'clock noon. So they needed something, you know, to go one step higher, and we wrote a film which, in our opinion, could be interesting for them. You know, it was a horror picture, and that was Repulsion. And in the making of it, we tried to make it somehow more of a psychological thriller rather than a horror movie.
So, good picture. Does very well still today. Tell me, how did you make Deneuve act this way? I mean, she's very convincing in this role. Do you have any tricks or what?
No, she was just very well motivated. It was a great experience for me to work with her. She really was listening to what I had to say, you know, and getting it out of me, you see, and I would get out of her this acting, you know. Just she was totally concentrated and doing it so well that towards the end, after a few months, I realized that she was getting a bit neurotic, you know, which is inevitable.
No. So she really sort of went into the role. She
Yeah,
lived with
she
the role.
really did, yeah.
Yeah. Technically, it's very interesting too. How did you do these walls that are getting closer? And the
Well,
perspective is changing
Yeah,
too.
we build the set in such way, you see, like this, you know, like when you close a box and you put one under the other, you see. So we could open it up.
Oh, I see,
Understand?
yeah.
See, like this. You know, the walls were like this, like that. So, you see, and like this, like that, you know, like this. So it started like this, and then we would push this forward, and this one here, and
So
would
the
become
perspective
larger.
changes
Yeah.
too.
And also changing the lenses.
You have a wide angle,
using
must
wide
be. Yeah,
angles,
very wide
but
angle.
both. That wasn't sufficient, you know. You really had to
No.
alter the set. You know, using just wide angles, you can feel it. There is a, you know, optical trick, and I didn't want to do that.
This was your first really popular film with a wider audience, I think. wasn't it?
Yes, that
Yeah.
was the first. The Knife in the Water in France, for example, was seen by in Paris by 15,000 people. You know,
Yeah.
which is like what
Yeah.
you know we do one day now. Frantic opened first day. It made, I think, 22,000 people the first day. The whole career of Knife in the Water in France was 16,000. So nobody have noticed that film. That's why I had such difficult time to you know, to get any job.
So you sort of changed from a sort of an experimental film director to a more popular film director. In a sense.
Well, you know, you don't think you're an experimental
No.
film director. Let's, you know, except that I sent my film to an experimental film festival, I still think I'm experimental film director. I still experiment, you know, with what I'm doing, with my work, except that people somehow get used to certain form of expression that it seems less strange to them.
When you were in England, you made one more film for Compton Films, didn't you?
Yeah, I did
Cul-de-sac,
Cul-de-sac,
yeah.
yes.
And we'll see, well, something from the early part of that movie, which sort of settles the situation.
Is anybody there?
Yes, me. Dickie. I took the liberty of using the phone because Albert and me are having a little trouble.
Trouble? Trouble or not, you have very strange manners. One doesn't usually burst in on people without warning, especially at this hour.
One doesn't choose the time. One gets into trouble.
Actually, I don't know what prevents me calling the police.
I told you, Albert and me are having some trouble. Get it? Little fairy. Have a hell with you. Hello? You both better help me if you want to stay healthy. Hello? And don't panic, no hysterics.
Nobody's panicking.
Hello? What? In an hour? Yes, yes, I'll keep the call in. First off, we gotta fetch somebody.
So don't cry out, Sherry. Qu'est-ce que c'est que ça?
It'll be easy if all three of us push.
Push? I suppose you don't mind if we put on some clothes first.
Yes, I do, man. Get going. I'll show you the way.
Wait, I'll get down.
Come on.
Den bufflige förtryckaren och hans småväxta offer återkommer i olika gestalter i åtskilliga av Polanskis filmer. Och här ser vi Walter Matthau som mycket hungrig pirat.
Was that you?
What?
Eh? I thought I heard. It sounded like a pig.
Must be the heat.
Now, Froggy, be reasonable. Come on down, you little baboon.
You want to eat me?
There's a law of nature, by thunder. The strong always eat the weak. Come on down, lad. Make an effort.
Cannibal!
Come, Piggy Wiggy.
I'm not Piggy, I'm the frog! Cannibalism is a mortal sin. It will bring you bad luck. You shall ride in hellfire.
What about confession? What you think confession's for?
Well, the part of the younger man could have been played by yourself, easily, couldn't it?
Well, this was originally written for Jack Nicholson and myself. Yeah, the idea was to do a film together after Chinatown. We thought of doing something together because I had that funny scene with the nose cutting in Chinatown. And we wrote it with Gerard Brash for that reason. But then later, so many things happened, so many complications, the film was not made, and then we tried to do it again, but with other actors, and eventually 10 years later, that's the result.
But you sort of come back to these kind of situations, don't you, in your pictures?
Yeah, well, one always comes to the same type of themes without really being aware of it, you know. Now when you show it to me, yes, I know, I like that type of character, the bully, you know, funny. It's the people that these are people I met in my life.
Many of these scenes sort of remind you of Samuel Beckett or something like that.
Well, yes, I was greatly influenced by his writings and his theater in my youth. These were the first things. I was telling you about a hermetical Polish system where no wind from west was ever felt, and among the first things that were brought to Poland was Waiting for Godot, and I remember going to the theater in Warsaw and seeing this type of theater, which I have not seen before, and I remember the impact it had on me. It must probably have impact strong enough to last until.
Coming back to the 1960s, you were very much interested in film styles and in genres, and you made a parody of a vampire film, the Brave Vampire Killers again. And I thought we'll have a look at sort of the central sequence of that movie.
I wonder what is the central sequence?
Well.
Thank you.
Well, the girl in the picture was Sharon Tate, who later became your wife and after a short time was murdered by the Manson gang. And you have described in your autobiography so that this was the time with her was the happiest period of your life, and no woman has really meant anything for you that much afterwards. Is that true?
If it says so in my autobiography, then probably it is true.
You could have changed your mind.
No, I have not changed my mind. No, I have not. No.
Very often, the women in your pictures are victims. They're passive victims, aren't they?
There often are passive victims in life. More often than not, I would say. Simply because somehow evolution of our species placed them in a weak position. And what I'm doing in the films that I make, it's probably the reflection of what I observe in life.
So your conception of life is that life is a very brutal, paradoxical thing, really, which doesn't make sense, really.
Well, you know, I think many people were trying to answer that question, and I don't think they were very successful, you know, but it is a brutal thing, life. Life is brutal. Life is competition. Life is a fight. If you think that everything on this globe or this planet thrives on other species, there's no other source of nutrition than other organisms. Otherwise, organisms are eating organisms. Everything that you eat is a living thing.
Did the murder of Sharon Tate change your view on life permanently, more or less?
It certainly it did. I mean, how cannot such a trauma change? It was traumatic experience and lasting experience. You know, it was in a period of my life when, as you said, I felt happy and satisfied with what my life was about, you know, with direction it took, you know, with people I had around me, and suddenly it all changed in one day, you know, obviously.
But today you live in a sort of a balanced life, or you're less unhappy than immediately after.
Yes, I'm less unhappy because I think it somehow relates to, you know, your happiness relates to your personal life, and my personal life is okay now. You know, it's better than it was for a long time, and of course the death of Sharon is further away. I mean, it's been a long time ago. I was, you know, it happened. Some friend of mine, a psychiatrist, told me that it will be long recovery. He told me it will be at least 4 years. Boy, it was much longer. I can tell you that now.
Another woman victim in your pictures is Mia Farrow in Rosemary's Baby. She's a young lady who lives with her husband in a big apartment house, and there's very strange things happening. And we see towards the end where she's getting pregnant and she's going to have this baby. And we presented to the baby by a strange sect.
Rosemary, go back to bed. You know you're not supposed to be up and around.
Is the mother? Rosemary.
Shut up.
Rosemary.
Shut up, you're in Dubrovnik. I don't hear you. you done to its eyes?
Well, God is dead, the old man says in the movie, and Satan rules. Have those ever been your opinions as well?
No, this, you know, I don't have any kind of religious opinions in this matter, you know. I try to base myself rather on a more scientific approach to the philosophy. And this was a book which was suggested to me by Paramount Pictures, which I have executed. And I try to remove rather than add to it all those supernatural aspects.
Well, some people have thought you were a Satanist at the time, when there were sort of rumors of strange things going on. Huh?
Well, they sing what they want to sing, you see, what suits them. You know, it was convenient to sing this way, you know.
You're Jewish. Has that meant very much for you? I mean, except for during the war, of course, for obvious reasons.
Of course it meant, you know, it meant that my mother died in a gas chamber of Auschwitz, and my father spent 4 years in Mauthausen concentration camp. It also meant that I lived in the ghetto and then in the country, you know, running away from the Germans. Other than that, I don't know.
Today?
Today, what it means, it doesn't really mean much, because I wasn't really brought up this way. I was rather brought up Catholic, but I mean that's quite, as you know, reminds me that W.C. Field said once at the golf course that apparently no Jews are allowed here, and somebody said, who you're talking about? That's Darryl Zanuck. He said, Darryl Zanuck, he's Catholic. He said, the worst kind.
Many of your films are about alienation in various forms, aren't they? I was thinking especially of one scene in a picture called The Tenant. And we'll see the, part of the opening where you're presenting yourself to a landlady or to trying to get a hold of a room.
Quiet, Mirza. Mirza, quiet now.
Good afternoon, madame.
Yes, what is it?
I'm sorry to bother you. I was told about an apartment. This is the right building, though, isn't it?
Who told you?
A friend of mine. Well, a relation, actually.
The door.
I gather it's a small two-room apartment.
That's all I got to do? Some people think a concierge is a slave.
Not me, I assure you. Would it be more convenient if I came back later?
Anyway, you have to speak with Monsieur Z. I can only show the apartment.
I don't want to be a nuisance, but if it were at all possible, and if I might offer you some small compensation for your trouble, which is only reasonable. What a lovely little dog. You're Mirza, aren't you? It's a nice name, Mirza. I'm sorry.
Shelley Winters.
So is this the way you sort of were received in Paris originally? Or is this autobiographical in any sense?
Not far from that. Not far from that. As you know, French are particularly xenophobic and chauvinistic. But again, here you deal with an adaptation of a book.
Yeah,
was,
sure.
You know.
But there's some autobiographical experience added to it.
Of course, a lot of it. You know, when you a foreigner in France and without money and looking for a job, you remember it for a long time. You know, you always will be what the French call a métèque. You know, and I think I was a métèque for a long time in France.
But you feel more at ease in Paris.
I feel completely at ease today. Yeah, because I'm not unknown, and I'm not without money, and you know, and I don't live in this I don't live in this type of apartment. Very funny thing, when we were making this film, I decided to get an apartment in Paris, and Pierre Guffroy, the art director of this film, with whom I since worked a lot. helped me to decorate this apartment. At the same time, we're building this apartment, you see, the apartment of the tenant in the picture. Almost all film is made in the studio, and all that building, it's constructed on stage, you know.
It's a fantastic
It's all,
set.
it really looks very real. Looks like a rinky-dinky French place somewhere near République or Bastille.
Och här har Polanskis unge hyresgäst klätt ut sig i kvinnokläder. För våningen och minnet av den kvinna som bodde där förut har helt tagit över hans identitet. Han identifierar sig helt och hållet med denna unga kvinna som hoppat ut genom fönstret och tagit livet av sig. It's interesting when you see this sequence. You see how you use the architecture, the furniture are bigger than life, aren't they? To make this impression of you being small and helpless.
Well, we build a room in the reverse perspective. You see, so when you look at it from certain point, it looks absolutely real and normal. But when you start walking into this room, you become smaller and smaller. Of course, camera has to be exactly in the center of your design. You know, it's not in optics as Ames' room. You see, it's otherwise the window was enormous. See, at the end of the room, you know. And if you, but when you place your camera in the correct place, the room looks absolutely normal.
You like the technical side of filmmaking very much.
Oh, that's what I like the most, really. And I like to talk about it, you see. If instead of talking, you know, about the sects and my believing in Satan, we were talking about how the things are made, I would be much more excited and less boring than I probably was on your program, yeah.
So, what do you do you like to talk about acting? Do you like to talk about acting?
Oh, yes.
You like to talk about acting?
Yes,
you like to talk about yourself as an actor?
I like to talk about how things are made, you know. I consider myself an artisan of this seventh art, you see, a filmmaker. And I like talking about technical aspects. That's what I like the most. When some people ask me, you know, what I think about the style, about the, you know, the genre, about the line that is weaved through my life, you know, I just don't understand those terms, you know.
You're saying like Buñuel, I'm a simple man, I like to talk about simple things.
Well, I don't know whether I'm simple, I just like to talk about it.
He was.
He was, probably. Well, I really like to talk about nitty-gritty, as they say, you know. But we can talk about acting. What do you want to know about acting?
Yes, what do you think of yourself as an actor? We just saw...
Well, I think I think I had a lot of talent when I was a young man. I don't think I have used it because I went into directing. Otherwise, I had no opportunity to develop my capacities. You see, have I had more opportunity, I would probably end up as an actor because I know that I had talent because I started on stage when I was 12 or 13, and I played a lead in a play, and I could see the reaction of both critics and the audience. It was a huge success. It was a huge success because I was good in it. So it was something tangible, you know. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was also very much interested by directing. I went to a film school, and you know, I said somehow goodbye to it. Also, people don't trust you as an actor. You don't have you don't have too much opportunity to show your abilities, you know. And I know how difficult it is for the others. So I had to give myself the part from time to time to show it, but it wasn't enough to develop my, you know, what was in me. You
Is
know.
it difficult to direct oneself?
To direct oneself, it's much more difficult to direct one when you're acting than. No, sorry, it's much more difficult to act when you're directing than direct when you're acting. You see, because acting means concentrating on your scene, means forgetting about things around you, means also being completely relaxed, you know, like this. And when you're directing, it's just the opposite, you know. You think about hundreds of things around you, and everything but your line, you see. So when you direct and you stand in front of the camera, you tell yourself, now I have to forget about the lighting, about my partner, about the camera position, and about how many takes were done, and you just start to concentrate, and the clap comes and it said, you know, scene 79, take 14. And you think, 14 takes, oh my God, what? You know, and you already lost your concentration. And and then you say, okay, sorry, once again, okay, 15, bang. And you start going down, you see that this guy is not standing on his mark, you know? And you're staring at it, and you forget what you understand. You just have to tell yourself, now I'm no more a director, you see, for the length of this scene, you see, of that take, you know, and you just concentrate, and the camera rolls, clap comes, and you just go in your track, in your groove, you see. And what happens, you know. It's difficult to forget that you are directing, you know. In the theater, it's a similar thing, but it's, of course, easier because, you know, you know, once it's all together, you get used to the play, and at the 20th, 30th performance and night, you eventually become an actor and stop being a director.
Coming back to acting, there are other people except yourself in your films. You direct other actors as well.
Oh, sure.
Do you have a method of acting? Do you have a method of acting? Or how do you?
Of directing?
Yes.
No, I have no method. I realized very early in my life, in my career, let's call it this way, that every actor has like every man that you meet in everyday's life, has a different personality, different character, and you can't apply the same method to all of them. My first feature film that you kindly showed, or rather a scene of which you showed, Knife in the Water, had 3 actors only, a man, a woman, and a boy. And I immediately realized that we're totally different people, you see. The man was an accomplished theatrical actor, with whom you could talk and in quite technical terms. You could tell him, just say it a little lower, and then scratch yourself here like this, you know, and he would do exactly what you ask him, because he had a lot of experience, and because he was used to it. If you tried the same method with a boy, he would go completely lost, you know. He couldn't. He had to feel the thing. You just had to build it up as in Stanislavski's method, you know, and make him feel the atmosphere, explain to him what is the intention, what is the scene about, and let him do it spontaneously. And of course, each take, he would do something slightly different. The girl was not an actress. You see, it was her first movie. She was a cow. And she was unable to do either of those methods, you know, to follow either of those methods. So you just would have to tell her, you know, put the glass on this spot, you know, and then turn your head like this. And even though she wouldn't be able, she would forget it, she would put it here, you know. You could not get any emotion out of her, you see. It was really a big job. And once, you know, there is a scene when she thinks she's alone on the boat when her husband has left, and boy supposedly was drowned, but he wasn't. and she's sitting there naked and hanging her swimsuit, where the boy comes suddenly out of the water. He swims quietly in the water and shows up, and she should react to it. She was unable to react.
How do you make her react?
Well, actually, we shot a pistol right behind her back, you see, and that made her react. And, you know, we were calling her names, you know, you bitch, did it help? And she said, yes, it did, you know, because we were trying to just get her emotion, you know, to insult her, to push her around, but nothing would work with her. She was just a very bovine person, you know, to the very end. So I very early in my life, I learned that there is no particular method. You have to start working with a person and to see what he is like or what she is like, you know, and then use your best knowledge, you know, to feed her with ideas and to lead her or him, you know, and make them give you their best.
We'll now see you with a very good actor, Jack Nicholson, in Chinatown.
Shine shoe.
Hold it there, kitty cat. Hold it.
Hello, Claude. Where'd you get the midget?
You're a very nosy fellow, kitty cat, huh? You know what happens to nosy fellows? Huh? No? Wanna guess? Huh? No? Okay. They lose their noses. Next time you lose the whole thing. Cut it off and feed it to my goldfish. Understand?
You often play unpleasant people, don't you, in your films?
It's fun to play unpleasant people.
And what is it like to play with Jack Nicholson? We're talking about actors and good actors.
Oh, he's one of the best. He's an absolute master of his art, really. And you could see it recently in Witches of Eastwick, for example. You know, someone who can go so far in acting without it being unbearable is a real master. You know, he's one of the best.
That's the only time you worked with him?
With Jack, yes, it's the only time I've worked with him, yeah.
You haven't been able to work for some time in America due to you have this thing with the American justice. Do you hope to go back?
Well,
to be able to go back, let's put it
yes, I hope to be able to go back. I want to clear this business for the peace of my mind, but not to live there. I never wanted to live in America, and I like to work there because it's where the real industry was born. It was sort of a mecca to the filmmakers for a long time. But other than working, I never enjoyed anything there.
You didn't like living on the West Coast?
Well, you see, whenever I finish a film, I would get on a plane and go back to Europe. You know, living on the West Coast is like living in the suburb. Very comfortable house. Everything can be gotten by a simple telephone call, and that's it. Nothing else. I mean, you drive to the studio, and everything works beautifully in the studio. But then you have to drive home, and invite few people you know, and or get invited to somebody's home. There's just it's hard to understand how it works there. It's just you can't. There are no sidewalks.
It was called Sunny Siberia.
It is Sunny Siberia.
But you like to work. I remember when you were making this film, I met you at the Paramount Studios and say, making films in the United States, in Hollywood, is like driving a Formula One car.
That's what it is. It's a big, because it was very much criticized by many critics, young filmmakers, etc., Nouvelle Vague and whatever, that it's a big machinery. But it's this big machinery can be compared with the Formula car. If you know how to drive it, you go much faster than in a Volkswagen.
But you think you'll be able to go back? You settle this thing with the justice?
Yes, but I don't think I would like to work there.
But you're still accused of the rape, and it's not clear.
I wasn't accused of the rape. I was accused of a sexual relationship with a girl underage. Not a rape. Let's straighten that. There never was such a.
But accusation was sexual intercourse.
Yeah, it was. It was what's called in legal terms unlawful sexual intercourse. That's what it's called.
But making your latest picture, Frantic, for an American company, is that a first step to be able to go back to the United States?
No, it's not. It has nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with it. It's just it was my choice to make a film with an American company. I could have done a film with an American company years before. It has nothing to do with my problem.
Polanskis nya film Frantic, det är en thriller. Harrison Ford spelar en amerikansk läkare som just har kommit till Paris med sin fru för att se på stan och hålla föredrag på en läkarkongress.
I was talking about breakfast in bed.
It was in a minute.
I love Paris in the springtime.
Every moment of the day. I love Paris.
Honey, I can't hear you.
And when Harrison Ford's doctor comes out, his wife has vanished. And the film is about really his chase for, he's looking for all over Paris, while everybody believes that he had a sort of fight with his wife. She goes away. And when we come back in film, he is trying to find her some way, but he's on the roof of a house. And we have a look at that.
You're showing the best bits.
Of course. Well, this is one very good scene, isn't it?
Looks better on the big screen.
Of course.
Somehow, when I watch it on television, sorry about that, you know. But it doesn't
I didn't
look
invent.
so good, you
I
know?
didn't invent television. But it's a scene which makes you think of Hitchcock, and the film doesn't make you think of Hitchcock very much. And you have a strong. Do you have a sort of strong relationship to him?
No, I don't have a strong relationship. But if you do this genre, it's inevitable to be compared to him. You know, it's just there are certain references in this film, even obvious. You know, there is a scene on the same roof with the girl when she slides and he holds her like this.
Yeah.
With, you know, just it was purposely done to somehow remind you of West by Northwest.
No? But it's also the man he's the only one. Nobody believes him. It's like a Hitchcock thing to the whole conception of it. We shall look at another scene too when he comes into he comes down the hatch to the girl and he has a scene with the policeman. But we'll see that later on.
Well, then nobody will go to see the movie, and we have to stop this.
But this entire film was shot in the studio, most of it.
Most of it, no. Street scenes were shot in Paris, yeah.
But do you prefer to work?
I prefer to work in the studio because you're quiet, nobody bothers you, and because you can create certain things, certain sets better than they really are in nature.
Do you think that the cinema per se is an artifact? You're not a naturalist.
Of course it's an artifact. Obviously, it's only, you know, our constant effort is to make it look like life, but it has nothing to do with life, you know. When you take a scene and you analyze it, you know, when you look at that scene with the suitcase, for example, you know, and you break it to pieces, and you look at his expression when he's holding, you know, a suitcase, when he's putting it down, when he's hesitating, it has nothing to do with life, you know. These are only the points of reference, you know, it reminds you of life. We are constantly cheating you and leading you on and make you believe that it's life. And from year to year we have to bring new details to be more precise, sharper, wider, more color, better sound. But it has nothing to do with life. These are moving pictures. You see it's not live. You touch it, you see it's a tube. Or in the theater, it's a screen, and you look back, you know, that's what it is. You're photographing. Sometimes on television, you see pieces of life. Those are called newsreels. And what really happens, what's interesting is what happens and not how it's shown. You show it in a movie, it's boring. Life is very, very boring on the screen, you know.
That's a good ending. Thank you.